Okay, my next book review in my set of backlogged book reviews is this one. It's called Return to Reason by Kelly James Clark. And first of all, let me apologize because this is going to be a slightly technical review. Like I said in my introductory video, I do some philosophy books. I read some philosophy. And this can be a little technical for people who haven't had much exposure to it. So if you're not interested in questions like rationality, how rationality works, the existence of God, or philosophy, I'm sorry, this is probably not going to interest you too much, but I still want to review it because I found the book both interesting but also, as I'll explain, a huge failure. This book really is a valiant effort in trying to hold down the fort for post-Enlightenment rational belief in God. And for a short book, 150 pages or so, it covers quite a bit of territory, including an argument against natural theology, which is an attempt to explain the existence of God using rational premises. It also critiques a sort of traditional foundationalist epistemology, terms that I'll explain below. And it is found on quite a few undergraduate philosophy syllabi for things like, courses in the existence of God or epistemology and stuff like that. Because one of the reasons it's found there is because it's really a great exposition of what's called Reformed epistemology, which I'll also explain below. And it introduces some of the more prominent names in that intellectual tradition. And like I said, unfortunately I found this book to be really tragically flawed in several respects. And in the end, it's just a failure, both of the imagination and philosophy. Again, if anyone disagrees, I'm more than happy to have a conversation about it in the comment section. Clark starts off on a solid enough footing with a critique of natural theology. That is, the idea that a belief in God can be derived from logical presuppositions that all rational beings can agree upon. The most recognizable of these arguments are seen in Aquinas'S 5 proofs, including the argument from design and the cosmological argument. Clark rightly argues that different rational people can use different standards of evidence and think that these standards apply in certain situations. For example, to use the example that he did regarding the argument from design, some people think that the argument from sufficient reason applies to all things within the universe, while others, namely people who find the argument convincing, think that it can apply to the universe as a whole, the universe itself. Some astrophysicists have recently asserted that the Big Bang itself may not have had a cause. I'm thinking here specifically of Lawrence Krauss, which would blow the entire lid off the cosmological argument as we know it. And because of this, natural theology seems like a failure on most fronts. Using only the tool of classical Enlightenment reason, it's not the case that all people will agree on the positive truth value of God claims. Because of this, what Clark calls a relentless need for evidence and reason, which he calls evidentialism. And through that, we can't provide proof for the existence of God. He sees it fit to critique evidentialism and critique foundationalism, which is the belief that all inferential beliefs, that is, all beliefs that can be explained by something else, are based upon more basic beliefs. Instead, thinking that he's offering a detailed critique of foundationalist epistemology, he really just goes on to flatly state that when you want to believe in something, you can, as Nike would tell you, just do it. In fact, in faith and rationality, a book by Nicola Walterstorff, who is also another Reformed epistemologist, he states this flatly and unashamedly. He says, quote, "A person is rationally justified in believing a certain proposition when he does believe, unless he has adequate reasons to cease from believing it. Our beliefs are rational unless we have reason for refraining. They are not non-rational unless we have reason for believing." I'm sorry, this is just not the way rationality works. And it's easy to see why. Say I want to believe that an invisible giant meatball sandwich causes things to fall to the ground, not gravity. Try proving me wrong. Okay? We don't believe in something until we have reason to not believe it. That's not the way science works, that's not the way reason works, that's not the way logic works, that's not the way evidence works, that's not the way pretty much any rational reasoned argument would proceed. You don't believe in something until you can't any longer believe in it. You suspend belief until you are convinced because of a positive amount of evidence that meets a certain threshold for belief, or you lack belief because you fail to meet that threshold. And instead of changing his own view in the light of insufficient evidence, like most philosophers I think would do, Clark follows in the footsteps of what I see and consider to be an unfortunate yet storied philosophical tradition known as Reformed epistemology. It's called Reformed epistemology because it has its roots in the Protestant Reformation, especially in the theology of John Calvin. But it's recently been revived by the likes of, as I mentioned earlier, Nicholas Walterstorff, Alvin Plantinga, and William Alston. Reformed epistemology holds that belief in a God is both proper and basic, as philosophers would say, or properly basic. And basic here means without recourse to being explained by something else. So in other words, basic beliefs are primary beliefs which don't need themselves to be explained. And properly means that a belief is justified. So in other words, Reform epistemologists believe that God is both something that is justified and does not have to be explained. Well, isn't that convenient? It just seems obvious to me that Reformed epistemology is a way of trying to smuggle through the back door what you can't get in through the front. It completely eschews the rules of reason that the game of philosophy has always used. Like evidence and reason and logic. And if you disagree with that, let me ask you a question. Those three Reformed epistemologists that I just named, Alvin Plantinga, Nicholas Walterstorff, and William Alston, they're all theists. And again, please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments section, but I don't know of a single Reformed epistemologist who is an atheist. And in fact, these writers that I've just named seem to be Reformed epistemologists because they have found that the sort of epistemic paradigm of foundationalism, of Cartesian epistemology, does not provide them with an apparatus that can prove or even provide existence for the evidence of God. So they basically throw it out the back door and redefine rationality such that they can now believe in something for which they have no evidence. I want to sort of end by saying that I'm by no means an uncritical reader of the Enlightenment or the traditions that flow out of it. But what I find really dishonest about this book is not that it feels that it can dismiss centuries of philosophical thought, pretty much everything after, or much after Descartes, in just 150 pages, but that it makes it the tremendously intellectually dishonest move of trying to assert, note that I'm not saying here prove or demonstrate, but just assert, a completely ad hoc belief that can be introduced by no other rational means. I'm also not someone who thinks that philosophy should necessarily in any way resemble science in content or in method, but one really is treading ground when you import the word rationality here, leading people on to believe that it's anything like the rationality of science, which it clearly is not. Clark, Plantinga, Walter Storff, and William Malston, and other Reformed epistemologists haven't really critiqued anything. They've simply, in my opinion, skirted the issue of belief and of rationality, and have thereby created a whole new welter of problems for themselves. I can understand when someone asserts that their belief in God is basic, that is, that it's primary and can't be explained by anything else, but saying that it's properly basic, that these kinds of beliefs are justified, is simply not reasonable or rational. Return to Reason, the ironically titled Return to Reason by Kelly James Clark.